Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. Hello. How are you? I tell you what, Jan, I'm not enjoying Jupiter retrograde at the moment. I've got Moon in Gemini and it's just like... and my Moon's in my 10th house of career and it's just like... Anyway, I haven't got long. I think it's the 4th of February and then it comes out of retrograde, so... roll on 4th of February. Anyway, I'm not wishing my life away. So I hope, and in fact, I'm not enjoying the Saturn transit either. But there are lots of different ways of tackling things. Now, today, we have a very interesting episode. So get nice and comfy because we're going to go over quite a bit of ground. Now, there's more things in astrology than natal charts. We discuss charts that you can make when a client books a session. I always look at a chart for when the date and the time that the email comes in, depending on what's going on for the client or going on for me for that matter. So there's more than just your natal chart. Natal chart's what you learn first. And once you've got your head around that, great, it's good. It saves life, the universe and everything. It's fab. So what I'm going to be discussing today is the other types of astrology. They're called electional, mundane, horary, degree meaning, solar and lunar returns, prenatal, epoch, I don't even know what that is, and astrology in relation to eras of time. So I'm quoting from the modern textbook of astrology, which is hardly modern now, revised edition by Margaret E. Hone. And what I want to talk about today is electional astrology. Now, it doesn't matter how unqualified you are and how little you know, you can still do and will still be asked for what is called electional astrology. That's the official term for it. Now, electional astrology, I'll read you the blurb. So this is Margaret's interpretation of what she thinks electional astrology is. This book is used as a textbook for one of the astrology schools that's in London. I'm sure it's in London, but yeah. So whether or not they still use it as a textbook, I don't know, but it used to be. So she says, there are many ways of using astrological symbolism. The student should have general information on these so that he knows what's implied by each. But to be fully informed, it's necessary to read special books on each or to take lessons from the few who've specialised in so that he may try for himself these techniques, on most of which much more research is needed before authoritative statements can be made. So I've given you the list of things she said, and election astrology is number 1, which is the one we're going to do today. Now, she recommends a book called Electional Astrology by a guy, I don't know if it's a man actually, Vivian, is that a boy or a girl's name? Vivian Robson, and that's 1937. So do go to the show notes for today's episode because the link to that book, because it's out of copyright now, it's written in 1937, we're now 2025, copyrights, I think it's a maximum of either 50 or 70 years, and it's past all of those now, so it's out of copyright. So you can read that book, and I'll quote a little bit from it in a minute. So, an astrologer is often asked to choose a favourable time for some action to be taken. Procedure depends upon whether a period of time within certain limits has to be chosen or whether the project is to be begun at an exact moment. If the matter's a personal one, then the natal chart of the person with its progressions and transits must be studied in relation to the current planetary positions. No carefully chosen moment will make a matter successful if these are unfavourable, though the careful choice may help. Even with an impersonal matter, such as the formation of a business company or the starting of a club, it's better to have the map for the beginning moment as harmonious as possible with that of the managing director, chairman, president, or whoever is to be in control. Now, she's using the word map there for an astrological chart, and I'm not too sure too many people actually use that as an expression. He uses it quite a bit. But anyway, carrying on. The traditional phrase used for the wider process is the making of an election, which simply means making a choice. But if the matter is to be planned to begin at a definitive moment, then alternative maps may be made of various possible moments in order to decide not only when the interplanetary positions are favourable, but when the ascending degree and the resulting houses and planetary house positions are also favourable. The one decided upon will then be called an election map. Now again, I've not seen that expression electional map knocking about much, okay, but that's what she called it back then in this book. I think it was originally written in 1950 something, 2002, it was originally written in 1951. Well remembered, Mary. If the beginning of such a matter is arranged to be at a definitive moment, and hence the question of choice does not arise, a map for that moment is called an inceptional map, meaning the map of a beginning. Full rules cannot be given, but examples will help the student to see how to work. Example 1. Inceptional map. A ship was launched at a certain time according to arrangement. At the appointed moment, Saturn and Mars were each side of a Leo ascendant, brackets conjunction, and all three squared by the Sun, brackets weakness and liability to suffer in the back. There was an opposition to Jupiter, brackets success, from Uranus, brackets breaks. At the time of an eclipse a year later, Uranus by transit became exactly opposition Jupiter, and the ship broke her back on rocks. So nobody could make a choice about when the ship was made or launched, or is this about when it was? Yes, the ship was launched. They just launched it, and then later on, boom, tragedy. Example number 2, election map. The formation of a society was proposed. The final decision was to be taken at a committee meeting. The chairman asked for astrological advice for the best moment within the available time for this to happen. Alternative maps showed that if a decision was forced early in the proceedings, Jupiter would be in the first house but near to the cusp of the second, whereas later on it would become conjunction, the ascendant. He was able to bring forward other business so as to delay the decision until the time advised. So she's not giving any charts there, but she's just telling you little stories. But for the next one, she says, another example is that given in chapter 17 of Flamsteed's map for the founding of Greenwich Observatory, the continued success of which is apparent. Any such map is to be judged in the same way as a natal map. The ascendant, sun, etc. will show the character, the second house planets and ruler will show the financial outlook, etc., whilst current progressions and transits will show its vicissitudes, as the years go on. Now, I have that chart because I found from my little friend Google the exact time that the first stone was laid. And I'm not going to do the example 3, which is election within a period, because that's far too confusing and my brain will get confuzzed. And it's talking a lot about new moon and Mercury and agreements and where are we now? No combination of planets seemed favourable and the ephemeris 6 months ahead, So we're today just going to be talking about election. So inception, nothing you can do about it. You go and Google and find out the time and the date the summit happened and you make the chart and you go, oh, that's why that happened. But we're talking about elections, okay? So this is your election map. Nothing to do with elections, to do with political parties. But you need to choose. Now, as you know, you are going to have friends, not as you know, but I mean, if you think about it, you're going to have mates and they're going to want to get married. That is the biggest one that I've ever been asked about. Which of these dates and times would be best for a wedding? Now, we're going to do the Flamsteed one for the Greenwich Observatory in a second, but I just want to talk about marriages. So you have a marriage, two people decide to stay together for a long amount of time and exchange rings, possibly or not. A wedding is an event, and there's a certain amount of leeway to what you might choose. And I'm going to use as our first chart example, I've got the date and time of when I became married for the second time, because it's my second husband, the first one ran off with somebody else. It's all happy now. And I've got the chart for that, so we're just going to have a little skip around that. Then we're going to do the chart for the Greenwich Observatory, because it's zillions of years old, and the Greenwich Observatory does still exist, and we'll talk a little bit about Flamsteed and what it was all about and whatever. But when we decided to get married, we had to choose a date. Now, generally speaking, your date that you decide to get married is going to, you're going to have to please a lot of people, or not, as the case might be. There might only be certain times that you can book the flipping thing at the register office, or the photographer can come, or whatever. There's a whole host of things that need to be considered. And being an astrologer myself, and so this is in the year 2008, which is zillions of years ago, 17 years ago. Blimey, was that long ago? 17 years ago, to be precise. Obviously, my astrological knowledge wasn't the same type of knowledge that I have now. I'm not saying it's any better or worse now, but I have seen more charts and more events, etc. So all I knew was that what month we wanted to get married. But I wanted to choose the time, because even though I was not that much of a beginner astrologer, I suppose I was halfway through my astrology career, I knew that the ascendant was important. And everything else in the UK, you cannot choose a time. You can't choose what time your baby's born, and you're lucky if anybody records it, and la 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 la. And I definitely wanted the chart at the time that we chose to have a Libra ascendant, because Libra is all about marriage. And as I was talking about last week, that my partner has a Libra ascendant, I've got Sun in the 7th. To me, having a Libra ascendant and choosing a time of day was super important for me. Now, we did have that there were certain times that weren't available, but we were booking pretty much quite a while in advance, so we had a little bit more choice. Don't get bogged down with this when you're choosing a date for somebody's wedding, or they're asking you whatever. That nowadays, as opposed to when Margaret was writing her book in 1950, there's less choice rather than more choice. Because there's more people in the world now. The population's increased, so there's less slots for being able to get the times that you might want. But anyway, so here we have the chart. So I'm looking at the chart now, and you can have a look at it. It's on the show notes, and to get to the show notes, you need to go to, let me give you the full address, astromary.libsyn.com, libsyn.com. And whenever you go to that address, it's always the latest episode that will pop up, but there is a search box at the top, and if you're ever bored and you want to know something about astrology, you can put a search in the box, you know, like aspects or houses or whatever, and all the episodes that have got that information in them will come up, and they'll come up as a list. So thank you very much, Libsyn. They do a great thing. But obviously, there's going to be a different address after the .com / there'll be a different one for each episode. But you don't need to worry about it. You just go to Libsyn, and if you want a particular episode number, and today is episode number 424, so 424. You can also search for that in the box, but it's probably best to write the word episode and then the numbers 424, and it'll come up. Now, So here's the date and the time that me and my hubby got married in Bath in the Guildhall, and it was a really, really nice wedding. I loved every second of it, and it was over in a flash. So one of those things, you have such fun, it's all gone. Now, we chose June because we didn't want the weather to be horrible. In the UK, the weather is extremely variable, and it did rain a bit on the morning of the date that the wedding happened. But here we got the chart. So we got a Libra ascendant 6 degrees because we chose 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So that was the time that we had to be in the register office with everybody in the room and sign a bits of paper. There was other stuff that happened before then. We hired a little horse and carriage, 1 horse, 1 carriage, and I think the chappie owned a little doggy. But anyway, and so we were taken by the horse and carriage to the Guildhall. It was a very short journey. It was only a few streets, but I just, it was so lovely. And we got out and we went into the Guildhall, and then afterwards we had a reception on a narrow boat on the canal in Bath, and the canal was steered all the way up to what's called the Weir in Bath, where all the water goes. It's got lots of lovely photos there, and it was a super day. I loved it, and the cake was nice, and a friend came and played guitar for us, and it was a super wedding. Now, this is a wedding chart. So if you've got a Libra ascendant, you do all the things that you would do normally when you're trying to work something out. So if you're like calculating times and you get onto your astro.com, you start clicking about, choosing different times. So I've got 6 degree Libra ascendant. The sun is in the 9th. Libra ascendant, the ruler to the chart is Venus, and Venus is in the 9th as well, and it's conjunct to the sun, even though the sun's 27 degrees Gemini and Venus is 0 degrees Cancer. I have no Cancer planets in my chart, but my partner does. They've got Uranus in Cancer. I've got moon in Gemini and a 27 degrees moon is how far away from my natal moon? My natal moon is 17, so it was 10 degrees away, but and Mercury was retrograde. Now, I didn't put off having the wedding on that date because I was born with Mercury retrograde, and Mercury's 13 degrees into Gemini, so it's squaring my natal Mercury. Don't care, I was born with that, and it's pretty much conjunct to my natal moon. So I did look at how it would compare to me and to compare to hubby's charts, and I'm not going to talk about his chart because I don't have his permission to discuss his chart, but in mine I know that the astrology was pretty good. Mars is in the sign of Leo. I've got a Leo ascendant. The moon and Pluto are conjunct in the 3rd house, and the moon is how we feel. Pluto is 29 degrees Sag retrograde, and the moon is 25. And the 3rd house is communication, and with moon and Pluto conjunct there, it was a very emotional day for us. My youngest sister came and didn't feel well. She was starting dementia at that point. This is the sister that had Down syndrome. And so my other sister unfortunately had to take her home because she was very stressed about not being with mum, because mum couldn't come. Mum was too old as well, so mum didn't come to the wedding. And Jupiter's retrograde as well. And you could look at that chart, and Neptune's retrograde. You could look at that chart and think, oh my lord, there's all these retrograde planets, not going to do it. There isn't much you can do about a retrograde planet. You might have to wait months for it to come out of retrograde. And then let's be real about things. Stuff is going to retrograde. What you don't want to have is your retrograde planet on your ascendant, because the ascendant is the moment of when the thing starts, the beginning of it. So it starts all in the sign of Libra. It's all lovely and it's beautiful and it's love, blah, 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 blah. The other planets being retrograde, don't give yourself a headache about them, as long as they're not exactly conjunct to the ascendant and they're in a place where you can, inverted commas, cope with them. Don't fret. And there's no way that you're ever going to be able to get a time and a date that's going to suit you and your partner and your guests and the world and the register office and the church and whatever. You're not going to do it. So you've got to do the best that you can by choosing. I knew that I wanted to have a Libra ascendant. Okay. Does that make sense? Hope so. Now, you can also save that chart and then later on, look to see what planets are conjunct in it, because this is the moment that you are now, in my case, now legally joined with someone. So you can look at, are there any sort of transits that are causing difficulties? There's a hell of a lot of oppositions in this. The sun's directly opposition the moon. Okay, it's square to Uranus. Okay, it's opposition to Pluto, but it was me getting married a second time was life-changing for me, because I'd been single for so long and a single mother, 8.5 flapping years I was on my own. So I was well happy about being able to, because I got a son in the 7th, well happy about being able to have another relationship, and I wanted it to be legal. It's perfectly possible in the UK to live with someone and have what's called, there is the word for it, common law, beg your pardon, except in common law, so you just live with someone and you're heterosexual, you are not protected by the law. The law doesn't protect you. If you're married, it does. So assets, etc., are split all the way down the middle. If you decide not to be married anymore, that won't be the case if you're just living with someone. And especially if there are children involved. So I already had a child and I didn't want anything to, go wrong with that. Not that he's the father, but these were all considerations for me. This is why I wanted to be legally married. Both. Okay. So we've got the root of the chart is in the 9th. The 9th is spirituality, long distance travel, further education, but belief, because I believed in how can you put it? I believed in marriage. So Venus in the 9th. Now, I don't know whether there's probably some old orrery astrology or whatever rules on, don't have your ruling planet in the 9th, and we'll read about those in a minute. But that was the time that I chose, because I wanted the ascendant to be right. It's a changing chart. There's lots of squares, there's oppositions, but that was what I chose. And 17 years later, we are still together. So that's my marriage chart. Wedding chart, beg your pardon. You can go and have a look at it. There's so what else have we got? So we've got Moon conjunct Pluto in the 3rd, and the 3rd house is siblings. And as I say, there was one sibling that the one that I liked, is that the one got on the most with, that she had a bit of a breakdown and the other sister had to take her home. We've got Jupiter in the 4th, retrograde in Capricorn. I'm born with Jupiter in Capricorn anyway. I wasn't bothered about that. The North Node is in the 5th house of romance. That's pretty nice. Chiron's there as well, conjunct to Neptune, and Neptune's retrograde. So romance. I liked the North Node in the 5th, and Uranus in the 6th. Now, I didn't pick the whole chart apart. All I was aiming for at that moment in time was to have the Libra ascendant. I didn't go into great detail with myself about where all the other things were, because I didn't have the choice to be able to do that. We couldn't move it too far forwards. We couldn't do it backwards. There was weather considerations to take into account, and I've got a large family, etc. And everybody needs to be invited and stuff. We've got Saturn and Mars in the 11th. Saturn's in Virgo and Mars is in Leo. And probably I expect that Saturn's conjunct to my natal Pluto. Is that right? Yeah, I've got natal Pluto 4 degrees and Saturn is conjuncting that. So Saturn's about being sensible and grounding things. And I've got Pluto in the 1st house. So boom, make of that as you whatever. So that's why I chose that. So I've explained that to you, surely, hopefully in enough detail. Now let's look at the Greenwich Observatory. Now, this guy Flamsteed was a Leo. I won't go into great detail about it, it's just a little bit that I read up on him. He was the first royal, he was the first royal astronomer. So they had, at that point in time, they were doing astronomy, not astrology, astronomy. So there's this guy called John Flamsteed. He was born on the 19th of August 1646 with the Julian calendar, which makes it the 29th of August 1646 with the Gregorian calendar at 7:16 p.m. He is on Astro Databank. John Flamsteed, you can whiz over there and have a look at his chart. So he was a British astronomer, the first astronomer royal of England, appointed on the 4th of March 1674, and he worked until 1675, is that right? Yeah, and also the director of the Greenwich Observatory. He made the accurate observations of the moon which helped Newton formulate the laws of gravitation. He catalogued over 3,000 stars. His appointment was an honour, with the title Astronomer Royal, chosen from among the most famous British scientists. So he also cited Uranus but mistook it for a star and catalogued it as 34 Tauri. And he died in 1719, so he was 73 when he died. Now, according to Margaret Hone, is that her surname? Yeah, Margaret Hone. Whoops. He chose the exact moment that the first stone was going to be laid to build this Greenwich Observatory that he was then going to do his thing at. And if you ask me, he chose a particularly good time. So we've got a Sag ascendant. We've got Jupiter, which is the ruler to Sag, at 9 degrees Sag, and the ascendant is 9 degrees. And the only difference between them is the ascendant is 9 degrees 4 minutes 2 seconds, and Jupiter is 9 degrees 46 minutes and 51 seconds. So Jupiter just slips into the first house. So now Margaret's sort of implying that he chose the time because he understood astrology. I honestly couldn't tell you whether or not he was or wasn't an astrologer. I haven't gone into that much. But he did choose the time he wanted to stick his stone on the thing, and to have that time 3:14 p.m. on the 10th of August 1675. And even when you go to the Greenwich Observatory website and you read the blurb, it's like, who chose that time? Apparently it was him. So he must have had a mate somewhere that did it for him, or he knew how to do it himself. But that's pretty accurate timing to choose to. And this is what I said just now, that if you're going to have a planet on the ascendant, make sure it isn't retrograde. It doesn't matter too much what the planet is, but a retrograde planet means that the plans that you make for that particular amount of time isn't going to go forwards, it's going to go backwards. So that you definitely don't want Mercury retrograde on your ascendant if you can at all manage it, because you're just going to have to repeat things. Might have to reverse the car, So the ruler to the chart is in the first, slap bang onto the ascendant. The sun is in the 9th. Now this is long distance travel, further education, philosophy, blah, 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 blah. It's Leo, the man himself, he's a Leo. You know, you're doing an observatory, you want to have that sun in the 10th, that's pretty cool. It's daytime, it's not night time, so it's a day chart if you're doing any of the whole sign medieval astrology jobby bobbies. Mercury is retrograde in Virgo, so it's in its natural home sign. Whether or not there are any delays, I don't know. Did the bricks not turn up? I haven't read all the blurb. And it's conjunct in equal house, it's conjunct to Mars, which is in the 10th. Now, if you look at the chart, so go to Libsyn, you'll see there's this lovely green pentangle, almost a pentangle in there, but I wouldn't get excited about that. But there's yods, there's 2 yods, 1 yod, 2 yod. Normally when you've got 2 yods, you can then make 3. Yeah. 1 yod, 2 yods, 3 yods. There's at least 3 yods going on, which sort of forms a bit of a pentangle. And they go from the ascendant to the... Actually, you're not supposed to use the ascendant. Are they going from Jupiter? Yeah, they're going from Jupiter as well. So there's a bunch of yods going on in there. I don't know how much of a fight you had to have to get this flipping place built, or who had to raise the money or whatever. Pluto's in Cancer in the 7th. And if I remember rightly, the UK chart's got something to do with Cancer and Pluto knocking about. But if you're doing something like astronomy, the 9th house is going to be pretty beneficial for that, I would have thought. Moon's in the 5th, Moon's in Aries, which is quite a get in there and do it type of sign. 5th is romance. But what Margaret was saying earlier, you've got to look at your 2nd house if it's a business. The 2nd house starts in the sign of Capricorn, ruled by Saturn. And in this chart, Saturn's in the 6th, which is health and routine. But in addition, the North Node is in the 2nd. So that's nice. North Node in the 2nd. This is a destiny for this establishment. As far as I'm aware, the building's still standing. There is Neptune in the 3rd. I don't know the history of it, but I don't know. Short journeys. Neptune's retrograde in the 3rd. Uranus is retrograde in the 4th, but it's not in somebody's front room, so we don't need to worry about the 4th. Conjunct to Chiron. But I'm sure at some point in any establishment there would have been not enough money to run things. And I don't know, maybe somebody's houses need to be knocked down to build the flipping place. I don't know how big it is. Have I been there? No, I haven't. But the sun is in the 9th, which is a nice placement. And the sun is in the sign it's happiest being in, because the sun's in Leo. And this chappie that had the whole idea for it and laid the first brick and whatever, he's a Leo too. So it certainly helped his career. So we can see why, if that's him that chose it, whoever it was that chose it, having Jupiter in its natural sign on the ascendant and Sun in its natural sign in the 9th. And so that all links up, because Sagittarius is the 9th sign and the Sun is in the 9th, and the ruler of the chart is in the 1st, in the same sign as it's ruling to it. So the ruling planet to the chart is Jupiter, and Jupiter's right on the ascendant, and you've got something nice illuminating the 9th house. Now, the Sun is opposition to Neptune, but you wouldn't be able to escape that. That blah, blah, blah. Don't know if it makes a difference, but so that's the electional chart for the observatory. So they weren't going to even put anything into place until that particular time, because somebody was going to come along and put the brick, and somebody else was going to put a bit of cement on it, and they were all going to clap or cut the cord. Who knows how they did it? But I thought, when I looked at the chart and I looked at the Greenwich Observatory, history things, that 314, nobody does anything that exact in the UK. Eek! And but they did, and as Margaret says, the place is still standing. Now, the last chart I want to do, because I mentioned it on my Instagram page and I was asked to talk about it. Now, this isn't so much an electional chart, because this time wasn't chosen, but this is the exact moment that Trump got sworn in. Because I was on the BBC Live watching it thing, and that's the time that he actually did the I swear and the blah-de-blah. Now, that's not the time that the event started, and it started a bit late. And at 12:06 p.m. on the 20th of January 2025 in Washington, D.C., Trump went blah, blah, blah. And so I quickly whizzed the chart up to see what's going on at that moment. And oh, what a surprise. Uranus is conjunct the ascendant retrograde in the sign of Taurus. Now, if you were to ask me, is that a good time to do what he did? My answer would be probably for him, yes, because he himself has got Sun conjunct Uranus in the sign of Gemini. However, I wouldn't particularly want to, and as I mentioned earlier, don't have a retrograde planet, but nobody's choosing this time. It just happened because that, you know, somebody had to sing a song and somebody had to walk along. This is the moment that he did it. And so this is more sort of an event chart than an electional chart, but I just wanted to cover it today because I have been asked to cover it. The blurb that I wrote on Instagram was expect change, and lots of it. And as we know with Uranus, you cannot predict what Uranus is going to do. If you're making predictions about Uranus, you're not talking about Uranus, but change there's going to be, and unforeseen change. And in Taurus, we know that Uranus hasn't enjoyed being in the sign of Taurus because that's an earth sign, and earth signs don't like to be rattled. And they definitely, if you imagine sort of you're sending a vibration through the earth, that's going to make it called worms come out, and the earth isn't happy, you know, volcanoes, those types of imagery with Uranus being in the sign of Taurus. It's not happy bunny. Now, the ruler to the chart is Venus, and Venus is in the 11th in the sign of Pisces, conjunct to Saturn, so, and conjunct to Neptune, but Saturn's in the 10th, so Saturn's happy there, but Saturn's not happy in the sign of Pisces. You've got Venus and Neptune conjunct in the 11th house of friends, but that's not what we'd be looking at if we were considering this person's just been given a job, so he's just signing the paperwork or swearing on the Bible or whatever it is he had to do. North node's in 29 degrees Pisces as well. Bummer, but it's going direct. But if you're considering you're just taking on a new job, so you've got Saturn in the 10th, but it's heavily being influenced in the house next to it by being conjunct. So Saturn is conjunct to Venus, and Saturn isn't conjunct to Neptune. No, but it's conjunct to Venus. And Saturn's in the 10th, so he's happy. He's a happy bunny, whether or not it's whatever the word is, residence, community. Moon's in Libra in the 6th. Mars is retrograde in Cancer in the 3rd. So the 3rd is brother and sisters, communication. Cancer, it's all about family, retrograde. And the Sun is conjunct to Pluto. Now, I couldn't have escaped, well, he could have escaped that by having his inauguration at a different date, but he'd have to break some rules there. And the Sun is conjunct the MC, and it's conjunct Pluto. So that's a very, I'd say, alien sign. Aquarius, and the Sun is just 0 degrees 53 minutes. It's Aquarius, it's not that it's not a caring sign. Aquarius is such a cerebral sign. It's not heart. So if you think of the opposite sign to Leo, and Leo rules the heart, Aquarius isn't. It's the opposite of that. I can't remember which part of the body that Aquarius rules. I think it's something like the legs, because the feet is Pisces, yeah. But you've got Sun conjunct Pluto in the 9th house of spirituality, and you've got Mercury in Capricorn there. So this is all about belief, long distance travel, further education. You've got some heavy duty, well, a heavy duty planet. You've got Pluto up there. So will he believe in those things? Will other people believe in him? It's not a friendly 9th house. If we compare it to the Greenwich Observatory, we've got the Sun there, and we've got Mercury's retrograde, but it's not the end of the world. And in my wedding, we've got Mercury retrograde in the 9th, so it's not the end of the world. But the Sun is there, and Venus is there. And during the day, the Sun's going to be up somewhere near the 9th anyway. You know, daytime, the Sun's going to be like 8, 9, 10, 11, depending on what sort of daylight hours we're talking about and location and stuff. But that's the moment that he did the thing. And Jupiter is retrograding, and he is a Gemini. I'm not checking his chart because I hate the man. The more I talk about him, the more upset I get. But Jupiter is retrograde in Gemini, and he's a Sun Gemini, and Jupiter's all about luck and those sorts of things. So you've got Jupiter in the first house and Uranus. And if I were choosing for a client, I'd go, no, do it. If you're going to do it on that day at all, then delay it or do it earlier or whatever. But you don't really want to be signing a bit of paper or making an oath. And you've got Uranus, the erratic planet, going bing bong, bing bong, bing bong at the moment that you're actually doing it. But he natally has got that. So he's perfectly happy. We have to ask the question, what's everybody else going to think about that? So if we're looking at others, that's the 7th. And it's empty. It's devoid of planets, and it starts in the sign of Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto, and Pluto's in the 9th. And the old-fashioned ruler to Scorpio is Mars, and Mars is retrograde in the 3rd. So it doesn't look particularly... I wouldn't classify that as a happy chart. Not at all. So today we've been talking about electional astrology. So she calls it an election map. I've never used the term map. And let me just talk a little bit about the book that she mentioned. So hold on a sec. Now, the link that I'm going to put on the show notes for this, it's hosted at the Internet Archive. There's a thing called the Internet Archive, and certain members of the public and members of it will scan books and upload them. Now, sometimes it's done legitimately by libraries, and museums will scan books and upload them there. There's numerous places in the UK where things are scanned and uploaded so that anybody anywhere can read the stuff for free. I haven't looked into who scanned this, but because the address is the Internet Archive, it's legit in a sense to be able to read it, as I mentioned earlier, because it's out of copyright. I wouldn't be giving you a link to a book that was still in copyright, because that'd be unfair. And I know I do share a lot of Donna Cunningham's books as the PDFs, but always on the understanding that as far as copyright goes, I cannot charge you money for it. I cannot be making, and also I can't be putting those links out onto the internet too much either, because again, that's breaking copyright laws. And now with AI and the discussions about it, it's important to remember these things. Someone somewhere created that, and for you to be making money, not you personally, but somebody else to be making money on the back of it is WRONG. So the book is called Electional Astrology. It's written in 1937. The author, who I'm sorry I haven't investigated them, Vivian BSc. It's called, the official title is Electional Astrology, the Radix System, a beginner's guide to practical astrology, a student's textbook of astrology, the fixed stars and constellations in astrology. So there's a number of books that are also included in that. Here we go. Let me give you a bit more info. So Vivian Robson is gender male, yes. So he was the British curator of geology and paleontology in the British Museum. He was an accomplished and precise mathematician and a pro-astrologer, eclectic, studied with an extensive library. He edited Modern Astrology with Bessie Leo for 11 years after Alan Leo died, and his books include Astrology and Human Sex Life. Okay. He died of a heart attack on the 31st of December 1942, and he was born on the 26th of May 1890. He's a sun sign Gemini with a Virgo ascendant. That's going to stand him in good stead to be listing things in a library. And the sun is in Gemini, so an equal house. His sun is in... So you'll find that on Astro Databank if you want to gulp his chart. He's got Sun conjunct Pluto, get him, and Mercury retrograde, but he survived his Mercury retrograde. So here's his book. It's as scary can be. So we've got, I'll tell you what I think is scary. So we've got an introduction, we've got general principles, the moon, lunar, planetary house, personal elections, domestic elections, commerce and finance, business and occupation, friendship and favour, medical elections, marriage and children, houses and property, journeys and messages, games and sports, wars, fights, lawsuits, goodness me, agriculture and gardening, animals, prisoners and criminals, and public affairs. Now, if you read the marriage and children thing, you are going to lose the will to live. It's very male-centric, this. It's like women are chattels. It's like, I'm not going to read this. And there's things like, if the moon is this and then it's angled in that, and like, oh God, what was it? I'm just going to give you the thing that really cheesed me off. Hold on. Trust me, this is not modern. So these are the signs of the zodiac that you don't want, okay, if you're getting married. So Aries is bad for marriage. Taurus is bad from 0 to 19 degrees, but good. From 0 to 19 degrees is good, the rest is bad. Gemini, the first 15 degrees are good, the rest are bad. Cancer's bad for marriage. It's like all this bad and good, and it's like, hello, let's not do. But there was and then there was the thing about, he kept going on about, it's okay if you're marrying a widow. How many widows? Oh yeah. So the first 10 degrees of Capricorn are bad for marriage. The rest of the sign is good, especially in marrying a widow, and denotes that the woman will be loving and tractable, though she will have few children. It's like that just reading that chapter is like, it's like, hello, there's no woman that is, or conception as well, and the Lord of the this and the Lord of the that, which I know the Lord is just the ruler of the chart, but there was so much about the woman being those sort of, I don't even want to use the words, they were horrible words, like the woman's this and the woman's that and the woman's the other. It's like, hello, what about the bloke might have been a total dork? Excuse my French. But anyway, so if you want to learn about electional astrology and you want to scare the pants off yourself, then by all means go and read the book. The link is there. But I'm putting it up there as an example of what not to be considering. What I've discussed today is the things that can be considered. The ruler to the chart itself, the planet that's going to be on the ascendant, the house that the stuff turns up in. Obviously, you can use any house system you like, whatever feels right for you, but I think the most important thing when you're deciding when to do something is have an ascendant sign that matches what you're doing. So marriage, you want to have either a Taurus or a Libra ascendant because they're ruled by Venus. If that's the case, it might be a gay marriage, so you might want to have something a bit more exciting to be the ruler to the the ascendant might need to be Sagittarius or something fiery. You think about your own signs, the sign that you and your partner are. That's if it's a marriage. Business things, you'd expect more to have like Saturn and Capricorn and whatever going on. But anyway, let me know what time and date you got married and we'll do your chart. So I'll be back next week. Now, next week I am going to be discussing the chart of somebody who's sent me an email. They've given me permission to use their chart, so I am going to go through their chart. I'm going to email them back today and find out what it is, what one particular point that they'd want to discover or to find out, because they're just starting to learn astrology. So next week is going to be a listener's chart. So I hope you have a fab week, and I'll be back next week. Bye-bye now.